My late husband's watch was the only thing I kept from our wedding. When I couldn't find it, my son said, "I sold it, Mom. Nobody needs that old junk gathering dust." The antique shop called me, trembling. "Ma'am, we opened the watch and found something you need to see." I froze when I saw what it was, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand exactly what that watch meant to me, and what my son took away when he sold it like it was nothing more than trash. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and I've been a widow for 5 years now. My husband George died of a heart attack in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, which meant I couldn't even have a proper funeral for him. Just me, our 3 kids, and a priest wearing a mask in an empty chapel. That should have been my first clue about how little my family actually cared, but grief makes you blind to things you don't want to see. George and I were married for 40 years. We met in 1980 when I was a young nurse working night shifts at Providence Hospital here in Portland, and he was a rural veterinarian who came in with a dog that had been hit by a car. He stayed with that dog for 6 hours, refusing to leave until he knew it would survive. That's the kind of man George was. Loyal, stubborn. The kind of person who kept his promises, even when it hurt. The watch was an Omega from 1952. It had been a gift from George's grandfather, who'd received it after serving in the Korean War. When George proposed to me in the spring of 1980, he didn't have money for an engagement ring. Instead, he gave me that watch. "This is all I have that's worth anything," he told me, kneeling in the hospital parking lot at 2 a.m. after my shift ended. "But it's been in my family for 28 years, and I want you to have it, because you're my family now." I kept that watch in a velvet box in my bedroom dresser for 45 years. I never wore it. I never showed it to anyone. It was mine, the one thing I had that was just between me and George. A secret promise we made to each other before the kids came along and life got complicated. We had 3 children. Stephanie, born in 1982, is 45 now and lives in Boston. She's a banker, married to some hedge fund manager I've met exactly twice. Brian, born in 1984, is 42 and still lives here in Portland. He's a CPA, or at least he tells people he is. I paid for his accounting degree, $47,000 over 4 years at Portland State. He married Ashley 6 years ago, and that's when everything started to fall apart, though I didn't realize it at the time. And then there's Kevin, my youngest, born in 1987. He's 38, a public defender in Seattle. He's the only one who calls me just to talk, not because he needs something. After George died, I was lost. I'd been a nurse for 40 years, retired in 2017, and suddenly I had nothing but time and an empty house that smelled like the lavender soap George used to buy me every Christmas. Brian started coming around more often, which I thought was sweet. He'd show up on Sundays with Ashley and we'd have coffee in the kitchen. Ashley would talk about her personal training business, how she was building her client list, how expensive it was to maintain a good body in your late 30s. I should have noticed she never asked me a single question about myself. "Mom," Brian said one Sunday in late 2023, "you know you're sitting on a gold mine here, right? This house is worth at least $420,000 in this market. You could sell it, downsize, and live off the profit." "I'm not selling your father's house," I told him. "We built this place together. Every room has a memory." Ashley smiled that tight smile she always gave me when she thought I was being ridiculous. "Margaret, memories don't pay bills. George is gone. You need to think practically." I ignored her. I had George's pension, my nursing pension, and Social Security. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't desperate. I could afford to keep the house. But then things started disappearing. First, it was small things. A set of George's old veterinary tools, antique stethoscopes and syringes from the 1970s that he'd kept in a display case in his office. "Mom, I took those to get them cleaned," Brian said when I asked. "They were tarnished. They never came back." Then it was George's coin collection, something he'd been building since he was a teenager. Wheat pennies, silver dollars, buffalo nickels. "I donated them to a museum," Brian told me. "They'll appreciate them more than we do." I called every museum in Portland. None of them had received any coins. I started keeping a list. George's antique medical books, his grandfather's military medals, a bronze sculpture of a horse that had been in our living room for 30 years, a hand-carved chess set from Germany. Every time I asked Brian about something missing, he had an excuse. Donated, cleaned, loaned to a friend, stored somewhere safe. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to believe my own son was stealing from me. That's the thing about being a mother. You'll accept almost any lie before you'll accept that your child is capable of cruelty. But the watch was different. It was January 15th, 2025. I remember the date because it would have been George's 75th birthday. I wanted to look at the watch, maybe hold it for a while and remember what it felt like to be 24 years old, and in love with a man who thought a 28-year-old wristwatch was a fair trade for forever. I opened the velvet box. It was empty. I called Brian immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. "Brian, where is your father's watch?" There was a pause. Too long. "Oh, that. Yeah, I sold it, Mom." I couldn't breathe. "You sold it?" "Like 2 months ago. It was just sitting there collecting dust. Nobody needs a watch from the 1950s. I got $4,800 for it, which is pretty good considering how old it was." "That wasn't yours to sell." "Mom, come on. You weren't using it. Ashley and I needed the money for rent. The Pearl District isn't cheap." Ashley's voice in the background. "Tell her she hoards too much stuff anyway." We did her a favor. I hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at that empty velvet box for an hour. George's watch. The one thing I'd kept safe for 45 years. Sold. For rent money. So my son and his wife could live in a trendy neighborhood, and Ashley could post Instagram photos of their $6 lattes and sunrise yoga sessions. I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. I called every antique shop in Portland. On the third call, a man with a kind voice answered, "Chen's Estate Jewelry and Antiques. This is Lucas Chen speaking. I'm looking for an Omega watch from 1952. My son sold it without my permission about 2 months ago. Hold on." I heard papers rustling. "Yes, we have that piece. Beautiful watch. We were actually planning to clean it and prepare it for resale this week. I'm coming to get it. Today. Right now." "Ma'am, legally we purchased it in good faith. Your son provided identification and—" "I don't care. That watch is mine. It was stolen. I'm coming." I drove to the shop in the rain, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The shop was in a quiet corner of Southeast Portland, tucked between a vintage bookstore and a Thai restaurant. The smell of old wood and brass polish hit me the moment I walked in. Mr. Chen was a slight man in his mid-50s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He looked at me with something close to pity. "Mrs. Caldwell?" "Yes. I'm very sorry for what's happened. Your son seemed legitimate. He had paperwork, said it was part of an estate he was managing. He lied." Mr. Chen nodded slowly. "I believe you, but there's something you should know before you take the watch back." He disappeared into a back room and returned with a small wooden box. Inside was George's watch. The silver case dulled with age, the leather strap cracked. "We opened it to service the movement," Mr. Chen said quietly. "And we found something inside. Something that, well, ma'am, I think you need to see this. And I think you should consider calling the police." He opened the back case of the watch. Inside, folded into a space barely big enough to hold them, were 3 things. 2 yellowed newspaper clippings, a handwritten note on old paper, and a small brass key with numbers engraved on it. I picked up the first clipping. The headline read, "Local woman missing, Clara Morrison, 32, last seen November 1985. The second clipping, dated 6 months later, "Morrison case goes cold. Family pleads for answers." The handwritten note was in George's careful, slanted script. My hands shook as I read it. I saw who did it. I was there that night, working late at the clinic on Burnside. I saw the mayor's car. I saw him carry her to the river. I was too afraid to speak. I had a wife. I had a baby girl. He was powerful. I kept this to remember. I kept this because someday, someone braver than me might finish what I couldn't start. "Forgive me, G." I looked up at Mr. Chen. His face was pale. "Ma'am," he said softly, I think your husband witnessed a murder. The bell above the shop door chimed. I didn't turn around. I couldn't move. The note was still in my hand, George's confession burning through my fingers like a lit match. Margaret? I knew that voice. I turned slowly. It was Brian. And standing next to him, arms crossed, phone already out and recording, was Ashley. We got a notification from the shop's security system, Brian said, his voice tight. You can't just take that watch, Mom. Legally, we sold it. It belongs to the shop now. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. At some point in the last 42 years, the boy I'd raised had become a stranger. A stranger who could stand in an antique shop and tell me I had no right to my own husband's secrets. Brian, I said quietly, your father kept a terrible secret for 40 years, and you just exposed it because you needed rent money. Ashley laughed. Actually laughed. Oh my God, Margaret. Always so dramatic. It's a watch. Get over it. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. I'm calling the police. This is beyond me now. Brian's face went white. Wait, what? Why would you call the police? But Mr. Chen was already dialing, and I was already walking toward the door, George's watch clutched in my hand, the note folded in my coat pocket. Behind me, I heard Ashley say, Brian, what the hell was in that watch? I didn't answer. I got in my car and drove home through the rain, my phone buzzing with texts from Brian. Ignored. All of them ignored. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and read George's note again. And again. My husband, the man who'd stayed with a dying dog for 6 hours, had been too afraid to save a woman's life. He'd kept newspaper clippings hidden in a watch for 40 years. He'd carried this guilt to his grave, and now it was mine. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Caldwell? This is Detective Helen Torres. I'm a retired investigator, now consulting on cold cases for Portland PD. Mr. Chen contacted me about a discovery. I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible. Tomorrow, I said. Come to my house tomorrow. Ma'am, if there's evidence of... Tomorrow, Detective. I hung up. I made myself tea. I sat in the kitchen where George and I had shared 40 years of Sunday breakfasts, and I tried to reconcile the man I'd loved with the man who'd let someone die. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Stephanie, my daughter in Boston. Brian told me you're making a scene over Dad's old watch. Mom, please, you're embarrassing yourself. Let it go. Let it go. As if George's secrets were nothing. As if my grief was inconvenient. As if 45 years of marriage could be sold for $4,800 and nobody should complain. I turned off my phone. I poured the tea down the sink. And I made a decision. If my family thought I was just a sentimental old woman clinging to the past, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. Detective Helen Torres arrived at my house at 9 a.m. the next morning. She was a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She carried a leather briefcase that looked older than my marriage. Mrs. Caldwell, she said, shaking my hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I've been working cold cases for the Portland PD for 3 years now. The Clara Morrison case has haunted me since I joined the force in 1992. We sat in my living room. I made coffee, which neither of us drank. Detective Torres opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Clara Morrison was 32 years old when she disappeared on November 14, 1985. She was a secretary at City Hall. Single mother of a 14-year-old son named Samuel. She was last seen leaving work at 5:30 p.m. Her car was found 2 days later near the Willamette River, keys still in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat. No body was ever recovered. I handed her George's note. She read it slowly, her jaw tightening. The mayor in 1985 was Richard Brennan, she said quietly. He served 2 terms, then became a state senator. He's still in office today, 83 years old, powerful connections, untouchable. We've had whispers about him for decades, but never any proof. George saw him, I said. George saw what happened and kept quiet for 40 years. Detective Torres looked at me with something like pity. Mrs. Caldwell, your husband was probably terrified. Brennan had a reputation for destroying anyone who crossed him. Careers ended. Businesses closed. People left town in the middle of the night. If George spoke up in 1985, he might not have survived it. So Clara Morrison's son grew up without a mother because my husband was a coward. Your husband was human. She closed the folder. But now we have a chance to finish what he started. I need that watch, the note, the clippings, and the key. I also need to interview you officially about when and how you discovered these items. The key, I said. What do you think it opens? Safe deposit box, most likely. The numbers match the format banks used in the 1980s. If George kept more evidence, it might be there. My phone buzzed. A text from Brian. Mom, we need to talk. Don't do anything stupid with that watch. Detective Torres noticed. Has your family been pressuring you? My son sold the watch. My daughter thinks I'm being dramatic. And my son's wife posted on Instagram this morning that I'm having a senior moment and trying to cause problems. Torres frowned. Mrs. Caldwell, I need to tell you something. This morning before I came here, I received a call from a lawyer representing your son Brian. He claimed you're mentally unstable and that any statements you make should be disregarded. He also demanded that the watch be returned to the antique shop immediately, citing the legal sale. I felt my chest tighten. He's trying to bury this. It appears so. But here's what concerns me more. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email. I sent a preliminary report to my supervisor last night about the watch discovery. This morning, I got a call from someone in the mayor's office asking about the Morrison case, asking if there were any new developments. No one outside my department should know about this yet. Someone told them. Someone in your family, most likely. Mrs. Caldwell, I think your son is being influenced by people who want this case to stay buried. My phone rang. It was Stephanie, calling from Boston. I answered on speaker. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Stephanie's voice was sharp. Brian said you're talking to police about some conspiracy theory involving Dad's watch? Do you know how insane you sound? Stephanie, your father witnessed a murder. Dad was a veterinarian in Portland. He didn't witness anything. You're grief-stricken and confused, and Brian is trying to protect you from embarrassing yourself. Protect me? He sold your father's watch for rent money. Because you hoard things. Jesus, Mom, you live in a house full of dead man's junk. Brian did you a favor by clearing some of it out. I looked at Detective Torres. She was taking notes. Stephanie, there's a detective here with me. Your father left evidence of a crime hidden in that watch. This is real. Silence. Then, let me talk to this detective. I handed the phone to Torres. She identified herself, explained the situation calmly and professionally. I watched her face harden as Stephanie spoke. Ms. Caldwell, Torres said into the phone, I understand your concern for your mother, but interfering with a police investigation is a crime. If you or your brother attempt to obstruct this case, there will be consequences. She hung up. What did she say? I asked. She threatened to have you declared mentally incompetent if you pursue this. She said your family has been discussing guardianship options because of your erratic behavior since your husband's death. I felt cold. They're going to try to take control of my life. Not if we move fast. Torres stood. Mrs. Caldwell, I need you to come to the station this afternoon and give an official statement. Bring the watch, the note, and the key. We're going to find that safe deposit box, and we're going to finish what your husband started. After she left, I sat alone in my kitchen. The house felt different now. Every room where George and I had laughed and fought and raised our children felt contaminated by his secret. He'd made breakfast in this kitchen knowing what he'd seen. He'd kissed me goodnight in our bedroom while Clara Morrison's son grew up without a mother. And now my children were trying to silence me the same way George had silenced himself. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ashley, calling from Brian's number. Margaret, let's be adults about this. Brian made a mistake selling the watch without asking. We'll buy it back from the antique shop and return it to you. Just drop this police nonsense. You're making our lives very difficult. Your lives difficult? I said quietly. Ashley, a woman died. Her son never knew what happened to his mother. That was 40 years ago. It has nothing to do with us. You're going to ruin Brian's reputation as a CPA. People are already talking. One of his clients called this morning asking if he's involved in something shady. Good. Maybe he should have thought about that before he stole from me. We didn't steal, we borrowed, and you're too old to understand the financial pressure we're under. The Pearl District rent is $1,850 a month. Ashley's training business isn't bringing in enough yet. We needed that money. Then get jobs, real jobs. Stop living off what you can steal from me. Ashley's voice turned cold. You know what, Margaret? Brian was right. You've changed. You're bitter and paranoid, and you're using this watch thing to punish us for having our own lives. We're done trying to help you. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, realizing that my son's wife had just declared war. That afternoon, I went to the police station. I gave my statement. I handed over the watch, the note, the clippings, and the key. Detective Torres assigned 2 officers to track down the safe deposit box. Mrs. Caldwell, Torres said as I prepared to leave, I want you to be careful. If Senator Brennan is involved, and if your family is being pressured to silence you, things could get dangerous. Not physically, necessarily, but legally, financially. They'll try to discredit you. Let them try. I drove home as the sun set over Portland. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining. I thought about George, about the night in 1985 when he'd seen something terrible and chosen silence. I thought about Clara Morrison's son, who'd be 54 years old now, still wondering what happened to his mother. And I thought about my son, who'd sold his father's secrets for $4,800 and thought I'd just let it go. When I pulled into my driveway, there was a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. Dark sedan, tinted windows. It didn't move as I walked to my front door. Inside, I locked every lock. I turned on every light. And I called the one person I knew I could still trust. Kevin? My youngest son answered on the second ring. I need your help. Something's happened, and your brother is trying to destroy me. Kevin arrived from Seattle the next morning. He's always been the quiet one, the son who became a public defender because he actually wanted to help people, not because it paid well. He stood in my doorway with a duffel bag and tired eyes. Mom, he said, hugging me, tell me everything. We sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. I showed him copies of George's note, the newspaper clippings, the threatening texts from Brian and Ashley. I told him about Detective Torres, about the safe deposit box, about the car watching my house. Kevin's jaw tightened as he read. Brian's trying to have you declared incompetent? Stephanie, too. They've apparently been discussing guardianship options. That's not going to happen. I'm a lawyer, Mom. They'd have to prove you're mentally unfit, and you're clearly not. This is intimidation, nothing more. But his hands were shaking as he held the papers. My youngest son, the one who'd called me every Sunday for 15 years just to talk about his week, was realizing his siblings were capable of cruelty he'd never imagined. I need to find George's diaries, I said. He kept journals in the attic. I haven't been up there since he died. The attic smelled like mothballs and dust. Boxes were stacked against the walls, labeled in George's careful handwriting. Vet records, 1980-1995. Tax documents, Margaret's nursing books. Kevin helped me search through them, sneezing in the stale air. In the back corner, behind a stack of Christmas decorations, I found a leather trunk I didn't recognize. Inside were notebooks, dozens of them, dated from 1970 to 2019, George's diaries. I opened the one marked 1985. The first entry was from January. Mundane notes about veterinary calls and dinner plans. Then, November 15th, 1985. I saw something last night I can never unsee. I was working late at the clinic on Burnside, finishing up paperwork after a difficult surgery on Mrs. Henderson's retriever. Around 11 p.m., I stepped outside for air. That's when I saw the mayor's Lincoln Continental pull up to the vacant lot across the street. I recognized the license plate. He got out, looked around, then opened the trunk. He pulled out something wrapped in a tarp. Something person-sized. He carried it toward the river access path. I should have called the police. I should have done something. But I have Margaret. I have baby Stephanie at home. The mayor could destroy us. I got in my truck and drove away. I'm a coward. God forgive me. The entries continued for years. Nightmares. Guilt. Mentions of seeing Clara Morrison's missing person posters around town. In 1987, after Brian was born, George wrote, "Another son. Another reason I can never speak. If Brennan found out I saw him, He'd make sure my boys grew up without a father. I'm trapped by my own silence. I sat on the attic floor reading my husband's confessions and felt my marriage dissolve into something I didn't recognize. Kevin read over my shoulder, silent. "Mom," he finally said. Dad was terrified. That doesn't excuse what he did, but he thought he was protecting us. He was protecting himself. Maybe both. My phone rang. Stephanie. "Mom, I'm flying to Portland tomorrow. We need to talk face to face. I'm bringing some documents you need to sign regarding Dad's estate. It's important." "What documents?" "Just some paperwork to finalize probate. Brian's helping me organize everything." "Can I stay at the house?" Every instinct told me to say no, but Kevin nodded. "Let her come. We'll see what she's really after." Stephanie arrived the next afternoon with 2 large suitcases and a fake smile. She hugged me stiffly, ignored Kevin entirely, and immediately started rearranging things in the kitchen. "Mom, this place is a mess. When's the last time you cleaned out the fridge? And why are there boxes everywhere? I'm going through your father's things." "Well, stop. You're just dwelling on the past." She pulled out a folder. "Here, these are the estate documents. Sign where I've marked the sticky tabs." Kevin took the folder before I could. He flipped through it, his expression darkening. "These aren't estate documents. This is a financial power of attorney giving Brian and Stephanie joint control over Mom's bank accounts, property, and medical decisions." Stephanie's smile didn't waver. "It's standard elder care planning. Mom's 68. She needs someone to help manage things. She's completely competent. This is fraud. Kevin, you've been in Seattle for years. You don't see how she's declining. Brian and I are here. We see it." "You're stealing from her," Kevin said flatly, "just like Brian stole the watch." Stephanie's face flushed. "That watch sale paid for Mom's property taxes last year. Brian was helping. I paid my own property taxes," I said quietly, "with my pension." "Where did that $4,800 actually go, Stephanie?" She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed one of the suitcases. "I'm going to put some things in storage for you. Clear out the clutter." She headed upstairs before I could stop her. Kevin and I followed. She was in my bedroom, pulling boxes from the closet. "Stephanie, what are you doing?" "Helping you downsize. You can't keep living in the past." She grabbed a wooden box from the top shelf, my wedding album. She carried it toward the hallway. "Put that down," I said. "Mom, you look at this thing constantly. It's not healthy." Kevin moved to block her path. "Stephanie, put it back." She tried to push past him. The box slipped. It hit the floor, and I heard the crack of breaking glass inside. Stephanie looked down at the spilled contents. Photographs, loose and scattered. The album's spine broken. The glass over our wedding portrait shattered. "Oops," she said. Not sorry, not embarrassed, just, oops. I knelt down, picking up pieces of our wedding photo. George and I, 24 and 22 years old, smiling like we'd live forever. "Get out," I whispered. "Mom, get out of my house. Now." Stephanie grabbed her suitcases. "You're going to regret this. Brian and I are trying to help you, and you're pushing us away because of some old watch and a paranoid detective. Fine. When you're declared incompetent and lose everything, don't come crying to us." She left. The front door slammed. Kevin helped me pick up the photographs, but the damage was done. The album I'd kept pristine for 45 years was destroyed. That evening, Detective Torres called. "Mrs. Caldwell, we found the safe deposit box. Bank of America, downtown branch. But there's a problem. Someone attempted to access it illegally last week using a forged key. The bank's security footage shows a woman matching your daughter Stephanie's description." I closed my eyes. She knew about the key. How? Brian must have told her when he sold the watch. They've been coordinating this whole time. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm going to be direct with you. Your family is trying to bury evidence of a murder to protect themselves from legal liability. If they succeed, Clara Morrison's case stays cold forever. I need you to stay strong." After she hung up, I sat in George's office, surrounded by his journals, and realized I was more alone than I'd ever been. My husband had lied to me for 40 years. 2 of my 3 children were conspiring against me. And somewhere in Portland, an 83-year-old senator was pulling strings to keep his crime buried. Kevin found me there at midnight. "Mom, I'm not going back to Seattle. I'm staying until this is over." "You'll lose your job. I'll take leave." You're more important. For the first time in days, I cried. Not for George, not for the watch, but for the son who still believed family meant something. Detective Torres met us at Bank of America downtown 3 days later. The manager, a nervous woman named Patricia Cole, led us to the vault with a security guard trailing behind. The box hasn't been opened since 1998, Ms. Cole said, checking her records. Account holder was George Caldwell. After the attempted breach last week, we flagged it for police investigation. The safe deposit box was small, number 447. Torres used the key from George's watch. Inside, a cassette tape, a manila envelope, and a small jewelry box. Torres opened the envelope first. Photographs. 8 of them. Senator Richard Brennan, younger but recognizable, carrying something wrapped in a tarp toward the Willamette River. The photos were grainy, clearly taken from a distance in low light, but unmistakably him. George took these, I whispered. He had a camera at the clinic. The cassette tape was labeled in George's handwriting, for police, November 1998. Torres pulled out a portable recorder from her bag. We listened. George's voice, younger, shaking. My name is George Caldwell. I'm recording this on November 12, 1998, 13 years after witnessing Mayor Richard Brennan murder Clara Morrison. I was too afraid to speak then. I'm still afraid now. But my silence has eaten me alive. I'm leaving this evidence in case something happens to me. If you're hearing this, I'm either dead or I finally found the courage to turn it in myself. Clara Morrison's son deserves to know what happened to his mother. I saw Brennan put her body in the river near the Burnside Bridge access point at approximately 11:15 p.m. on November 14, 1985. I have photographs. I have this testimony. Do what I couldn't. Finish this. The recording ended. Torres rewound it, played it again. Her hands were shaking. This is it, she said. This is everything we need. Eyewitness testimony, photographs, timeline. We can finally charge Brennan. The jewelry box contained one more item, a receipt from a private investigator dated March 2024, 9 months ago. Payment, WAT, $200. Services rendered. Background check on Brian Caldwell. Kevin took the receipt. Mom, did Dad know Brian was in financial trouble? He died in 2020. This is from 2024. I looked at Torres. Someone else ordered this investigation. Torres made a call. 20 minutes later, she had an answer. The private investigator remembers the case. The client was anonymous, paid in cash, but requested detailed financial records on your son Brian. The report showed gambling debts, credit card defaults, and that he was 3 months behind on rent. The investigator delivered the report to a P.O. box registered to a shell company connected to Senator Brennan's campaign. They were building leverage, Kevin said. They found out Brian was desperate, then offered him money to keep Mom quiet. Torres pulled up her phone, showed us bank records she'd subpoenaed. Brian Caldwell received a wire transfer of $12,000 on January 3, 2025, from a company called Pacific Northwest Consulting. That company is funded entirely by Brennan's Political Action Committee. I felt cold. They paid my son to silence me. And he took it, Kevin said bitterly. He sold the watch, took their money, and tried to make you look incompetent so you'd stop investigating. We left the bank with the evidence secured. Torres went to brief the district attorney. Kevin and I drove home in silence. That evening, Kevin showed me something on his laptop. Mom, look at this. It was Ashley's Instagram, posted 2 hours ago, a photo of George's Omega watch with the caption, Vintage 1952 Omega for sale, DM for price, serious buyers only. She's trying to sell it again, Kevin said, even though the police have it as evidence. She doesn't know that, I realized. She thinks we still have it. Kevin grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. Let me handle this. He created a fake account, messaged Ashley posing as a buyer, negotiated a price of $6,500. They agreed to meet at a Starbucks in the Pearl District the next day. Kevin, what are you doing? Setting a trap. Torres already told me selling evidence in a murder investigation is a crime. Let's see how badly Ashley wants that money. The next morning, we sat in a car across from the Starbucks. Ashley arrived in her white BMW, hair perfect, yoga pants that probably cost $200. She waited for 30 minutes, checking her phone, growing increasingly irritated. Then a tow truck pulled up behind her BMW. Ashley ran outside. "What are you doing? That's my car." The driver showed her paperwork. Vehicles being repossessed for fraudulent documentation. The VIN doesn't match the registration. You'll need to take this up with the DMV and the fraud division. Ashley's face went white. The tow truck lifted her BMW, drove away. She stood on the sidewalk shouting into her phone. We couldn't hear what she was saying, but we could see her panic. "How did you—" I started. "I made some calls," Kevin said. "That car was purchased with money Brian embezzled from a client last year. The title was forged. It was only a matter of time before someone noticed." Karma? I thought. Immediate and visible. That afternoon, I met with Kevin's colleague, a civil attorney named Rachel Martinez. I showed her the receipts of everything Brian had sold. $41,000 worth of George's belongings over 2 years. "Mrs. Caldwell," Rachel said, "you have grounds for a lawsuit. Theft, fraud, elder abuse. We can file a civil suit for restitution and damages." "Do it," I said. The papers were filed the next day. Brian was served at his apartment. He called me screaming, "Mom, you're suing me? Your own son? You stole from me. You took money from a murderer's campaign to keep me quiet. You tried to have me declared incompetent. I was trying to protect you. Brennan's people said if you kept digging, they'd destroy our whole family. They'd expose every debt, every mistake. I took the money to make them go away. You took the money because you're weak, because you've been stealing from me for years and you finally found someone who'd pay you to keep doing it. I'm your son. You sold your father's secrets for rent money. You're nothing to me." I hung up. My hands were steady. I felt no guilt, no sadness, just a cold, clean certainty that I was done being anyone's victim. That night, Torres called with news. The DA is filing charges against Senator Brennan, first-degree murder. We're also investigating everyone connected to the cover-up, including the $12,000 payment to your son. Brian might face obstruction charges. Good. Mrs. Caldwell, you should know. Brennan's attorneys are going to come after you. They'll try to discredit George's evidence, claim he was unreliable, that the photos are fake. They'll dig into your life, your marriage, your family. Are you ready for that? I thought about the watch, about George's note, about Clara Morrison's son who'd spent 40 years wondering. I thought about my husband's cowardice and my children's greed, and the senator who'd murdered a woman and walked free because people were too afraid to speak. "Let them come," I said. I called the meeting for Sunday afternoon at my house. Brian didn't want to come, but Kevin made it clear. Show up or face criminal charges without any family support. Stephanie flew in from Boston, furious. Ashley came because Brian begged her to. They sat in my living room like strangers. Brian looked terrible. Unshaven, circles under his eyes, cheaper clothes than usual. Ashley kept checking her phone. Stephanie perched on the edge of the couch, arms crossed. Kevin stood by the fireplace with a folder. Detective Torres sat in George's old chair, recording everything. "This is insane," Stephanie said. "Mom, you dragged us here to humiliate us in front of a cop?" "I dragged you here for the truth," I said. "Kevin, show them." Kevin opened the folder, spread receipts across the coffee table. 14 items sold over 2 years. Total value, $41,000. George's veterinary tools, his coin collection, military medals, books, furniture, the watch. All sold without Mom's knowledge or consent. Brian stared at the floor. "Here's the interesting part," Kevin continued. January 3rd, 2025. Wire transfer of $12,000 to Brian Caldwell from Pacific Northwest Consulting. That company is funded by Senator Richard Brennan's Political Action Committee. He placed the bank statement on top of the pile. "Brian, you want to explain why a senator accused of murder paid you $12,000? Ashley looked at Brian. "What the hell is he talking about?" "They contacted me," Brian whispered, "after I sold the watch. Someone from Brennan's office called and said they heard Mom was asking questions about the 1985 case. They offered me money to convince her to stop, to make her seem unstable." "You took it," I said. We were 3 months behind on rent. Ashley's business wasn't making anything. I was about to lose my biggest client because of a stupid mistake on their taxes. We needed that money. Ashley stood up. You told me that money was from a bonus. You lied to me? I was protecting us. You took money from a murderer's campaign. Ashley's voice cracked. Do you understand what you've done? My business is destroyed. My Instagram sponsors dropped me. That car you bought me? Repossessed yesterday because apparently you forged the title. I have nothing left, Brian. Nothing. I was trying to help. You were trying to save yourself. She grabbed her purse. I'm done. With you. With this family. With all of it. Brian grabbed her arm. Ashley, please. We can fix this. Fix what? Your mother is suing you. The police are investigating you. You're toxic. I'm not going down with you. She turned to me. Margaret, I'm sorry for everything. I was greedy and cruel and I should have stopped him. But I'm not staying to watch him destroy himself. She left. The front door slammed. Brian stood there, stunned, then collapsed onto the couch, head in his hands. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably. Look, Mom, I know I haven't been helpful, but I didn't take any money from Brennan. No, Kevin said, pulling out another document. You took $2,000 from Ashley in February to hide Brian's sales and lie about Mom's mental state. You told your own mother she was a hoarder. You destroyed her wedding album. That was an accident. The bank footage shows you trying to break into George's safe deposit box using a copied key. You knew about the evidence, and you tried to steal it before the police could get it. Stephanie's face crumbled. Ashley said it was just documents about Dad's debts. She said Mom was going to lose the house if we didn't handle the estate properly. I thought I was helping. You thought you'd get a cut, Kevin said coldly. Stephanie started crying. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I've been jealous of you for years. You and Dad had this perfect marriage, this perfect life, and I never felt like I measured up. When Ashley offered me money, I wanted to matter to someone. I looked at my daughter, this 45-year-old woman crying like a child, and felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, just emptiness. Detective Torres spoke for the first time. Mr. Caldwell, your cooperation could reduce potential charges. Obstruction of justice, accepting bribes, elder financial abuse. Those carry serious sentences. But if you testify against Brennan's organization, the DA might offer a deal. Brian looked up, eyes red. What kind of deal? Probation instead of jail time. Restitution payments to your mother. Community service. But you'd have to tell us everything. Every conversation with Brennan's people. Every instruction they gave you. Every threat they made. They said if I didn't keep Mom quiet, they'd expose my gambling debts. They'd tell my clients I'd been embezzling. They'd ruin me. Brian's voice broke. I've been stealing from Mom for 2 years. Small amounts at first, then bigger. I used her credit card to pay rent twice. I forged her signature on a home equity line of credit application that got denied. I'm a horrible person, and I don't know how to fix it. The room went silent. This was my son, admitting he'd systematically robbed me while I grieved my husband. Why? I asked. Why did you need so much money? Online poker, sports betting. I thought I could win it back. I thought I'd replace everything before you noticed. But I kept losing, and then Ashley wanted the Pearl District apartment, and I couldn't say no because she'd leave me, and then Dad's watch was just sitting there and I thought... He sobbed. I thought you wouldn't miss it. I missed it every day for 45 years, I said quietly. That watch was the only thing I had that was just mine and your father's. You sold our marriage for rent money. Brian slid off the couch onto his knees. Mom, please. I'll do anything. I'll testify against Brennan. I'll pay you back every cent. I'll go to therapy. Get help for the gambling. Just don't cut me out completely. You're all I have left. I looked at Kevin. He shook his head slightly. Don't decide now. Detective Torres closed her notebook. Mr. Caldwell, I need your answer. Will you cooperate? Brian nodded, still on his knees. Yes, I'll tell you everything. Good. Come to the station tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bring a lawyer. She stood. Mrs. Caldwell, Senator Brennan is being arrested tomorrow. The DA has enough evidence for an indictment. Your husband's testimony and photographs are going to put a murderer in prison. After they all left, Torres to prepare the arrest, Stephanie to her hotel in shame, Brian to his empty apartment. Kevin and I sat in the quiet house. "Do you think he meant it?" I asked. "About wanting to change?" "I think he's terrified. Whether that translates to actual change, I don't know. He's still my son. He's also a thief and a liar who tried to destroy you." I knew Kevin was right, but some part of me, the part that remembered teaching Brian to ride a bike and nursing him through chickenpox, wondered if redemption was possible. "We'll see," I said finally. Senator Richard Brennan was arrested at his home in Lake Oswego on a Tuesday morning. The news showed him in handcuffs, 83 years old, still defiant. "This is a political witch hunt," he told reporters, "based on fabricated evidence from a dead man." But George's evidence wasn't fabricated. The photographs were verified. The cassette tape was authenticated. And Brian's testimony about the $12,000 bribe gave prosecutors proof of obstruction and witness tampering. The district attorney held a press conference. "After 40 years, Clara Morrison's family will finally have justice. This case proves that truth doesn't have an expiration date." I watched it on TV with Kevin. We didn't celebrate. Justice for Clara felt like it had come at the cost of everything I'd believed about my own family. 3 days later, a local news station ran an investigation. Personal trainer accused of selling stolen family heirlooms. They'd found Ashley's Instagram posts, interviewed the antique shop owner, talked to former clients. The story painted her as a gold digger who'd manipulated her husband into robbing his elderly mother. Ashley's business collapsed. Her website went dark. The gym where she rented space terminated her contract. I heard through Kevin that she'd moved back to California, living with her parents. I felt no satisfaction, just tired. Brian came to the house on a Saturday in late September. He'd lost weight, looked older. He handed me an envelope. Inside, a check for $500 and a payment plan showing monthly installments until the $41,000 was repaid. "I started seeing a therapist," he said, standing on my porch like a stranger asking for directions. "And I joined Gamblers Anonymous. I got a job doing bookkeeping for a small firm. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work." "You filed for divorce?" "Ashley already did. It'll be final in 3 months." He looked at his shoes. "Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just want you to know I'm trying to become someone Dad wouldn't be ashamed of. Your father kept a terrible secret for 40 years. Maybe shame runs in the family." Brian flinched. "I'm seeing his therapist notes helped the investigation. The DA said Dad's testimony might be what finally convicts Brennan. Your father was a coward who found courage too late. Don't make the same mistake." I closed the door. Not cruelly, just closed it. Brian stood there for a moment, then walked back to his car, a 15-year-old Honda, nothing like the lifestyle he and Ashley had pretended to afford. Kevin watched from the window. That was hard. Everything's hard now. A week later, a letter arrived from Boston, Stephanie's handwriting. "Mom, I know I destroyed something irreplaceable when I broke your wedding album. I know I chose money over you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I'm in therapy too. I'm trying to understand why I've been so bitter, so jealous of the love you and Dad had. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I'll wait as long as it takes. Love, Stephanie." Enclosed, a check for $2,000 and a receipt showing she donated another $2,000 to a domestic elder abuse charity in my name. I put the letter in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd answer it. In October, Detective Torres called. "Mrs. Caldwell, the Oregon Historical Society wants to acquire your husband's watch for their permanent collection. They want to create an exhibit about ordinary people who witnessed history. They'd call it Courage Deferred, the George Caldwell story. Will they tell the truth? That he was afraid? They'll tell all of it. The silence, the guilt, the evidence he preserved. The exhibit would include Clara Morrison's story too. Her son Samuel has agreed to participate. Then yes, George would want that." The watch was restored, placed in a glass case at the museum. The plaque read, "This Omega timepiece, manufactured in 1952, contained evidence that solved a 40-year-old murder case. Its owner, George Caldwell, carried the weight of terrible knowledge for decades. His silence protected a killer. His evidence brought justice. This watch reminds us that truth, however delayed, cannot be buried forever. Kevin and I attended the exhibit opening. Samuel Morrison was there, 54 years old, gray-haired, eyes like his mother's in the photographs. He shook my hand. "Mrs. Caldwell, thank you. For 40 years I wondered what happened to my mom. Your husband's evidence finally gave me closure. I know he waited too long, but he didn't have to leave anything behind. He could have destroyed it all. He chose truth eventually. I'm sorry it took so long. Justice delayed isn't justice denied. It's just delayed." We stood together in front of the watch, this small object that had held so much pain and revelation. On a Sunday in November, Kevin and I drove to the cemetery. George's grave was simple. George Caldwell, 1950-2020, beloved husband and father. I brought flowers, white roses, the kind he used to buy me. "You lied to me for 40 years, I said to the headstone. "You let a woman's son grow up without answers, but you left the evidence. You made sure someday someone would finish what you couldn't." Kevin squeezed my shoulder. Dad did his best with impossible choices. His best wasn't good enough. But maybe it was something. We turned to leave, and I saw Brian standing by a tree, holding flowers of his own. He'd been waiting, not wanting to intrude. Kevin stiffened. "Want me to tell him to leave?" I thought about it. About George's cowardice and Brian's greed and Stephanie's jealousy and all the ways families damage each other. I thought about Ashley, alone in California, about Brennan, awaiting trial, about Clara Morrison, finally at rest. "No," I said. "Let him come." Brian approached slowly, placed yellow chrysanthemums, George's favorites, on the grave. "Hi, Dad. I'm sorry for everything. I'm trying to fix it." We stood there, 3 generations damaged by secrets and silence. "I'm moving to a studio apartment next month," Brian said quietly. "Cheaper rent. I'm putting every extra dollar toward paying Mom back. It'll take years, but I'll do it. Will you?" I asked. "I will. I promise." I looked at my son, broken, humbled, maybe sincere. "You can visit the grave when you want, but don't come to the house unless I invite you. I understand. And Brian, if you gamble again, if you lie again, if you ever try to manipulate me again, you're done. Not just with me, with this family. Forever." "I know." Kevin walked Brian back to his car. I stayed with George's grave a moment longer. "You left me a mess," I told him. "A murder to solve, kids to fix, a life to rebuild. Thanks for that." The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the cemetery. Somewhere in Portland, Ashley was starting over. Stephanie was in therapy. Brian was making payments. Senator Brennan was preparing his defense. And I was standing in a cemetery, talking to a dead man who'd finally told the truth. Kevin returned. "Ready to go?" "Almost." My phone buzzed. Text from Brian. "Can I come home? Even just for Sunday dinners?" I stared at the message. Kevin waited. "What are you going to say?" I put the phone in my pocket without answering. "I don't know yet." We walked back to the car through the fallen leaves, the question hanging in the autumn air, unanswered. What would you do if your own child stole your most precious possession? Would you forgive or cut them off forever? Share your story in the comments. We read everyone. If you've experienced family betrayal over inheritance or belongings, send your story to our channel. You're not alone.